Now 7:15, and I'd like to call the Nagog Hill Orchard Working Group meeting to session. And it's now 7:15, because we have people joining by Zoom, we have to do a roll call. So Sarah, do you want to start?
Yep. Sarah Seward here, Jen Clancy here.
Amy Tarla Lewis here.
Sorry, Matthew Nordhaus is here.
Will Pickard is connecting by audio. I don't know why he can't be heard.
That's okay, he's here, so we can see him, and then if we need to vote on something, we can.
Yeah, that's good.
You have.
Okay. Excellent. So we need to review the minutes of 3/13/24.
Thank you, Matthew, for writing them.
Do you know if anyone had any edits?
I had on page 3, it's just, I think it's just a run-on, town meeting presentation.
Yes.
About halfway down, it says Matthew Morehouse stated that the working group will present to town meeting to present the group's plan. So I think you just need to get rid of the second to present
Got it.
and change group's plan to group plan.
That's probably a good idea.
Minor, that was it.
Okay, thank you.
Karen, we just did a roll call and because Will's joining online, so can we just. Karen Morrison, present. 8:17.
17?
7:17. Great.
Okay, any other corrections? Did you have a chance to look at the minutes?
I did not have any major
Okay.
issues with it.
I moved that we accept the minutes as amended.
Second,
Motion has passed.
okay.
So
We need to
then,
vote on it.
we need to vote on it.
So motion by Sarah.
I made it,
motion.
seconded by
Seconded by
Jen.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor?
Oh,
Aye.
no, we gotta do roll call.
Yep. Sarah Seward, aye.
Jen Clancy, aye.
Amy Tarla Lewis, aye.
Matthew Nordhaus, aye.
Karen Morrison, aye.
And Will.
Well, you're
answer too.
muted.
Will, you should not be muted at this point.
Text him if he's muted.
Um,
That's fine. You have majority.
Yeah.
Okey dokey.
All right, so our next agenda item is a discussion planning an update of the public listening session. So I was able to reserve the Sturts room at the end of April, and it's like the last Thursday of the month. That's the
25th.
Yeah, the 25th.
Yep.
And then the event will start at 6 o'clock. And Littleton, TV will be there to set up the Zoom and they can film it for us. Cool. So,
Thanks for finding that date. I know there weren't many dates to deal with.
yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Sorry, Amy, you said 6?
Yeah, it'll start at 6 and it'll go till 8. And I hit this unmute button, it doesn't like, I don't know why this is.
No, what's on his end?
Okay. Right, so I had done a preliminary PowerPoint presentation. I took the last PowerPoint presentation from the winter one, copied it over, added some new slides. I know Brad has sent me some suggestions of things to add. I don't know if anyone has had a chance to look it over.
I did since we chatted this morning
Okay.
too, and I think all the things that we chatted about have been done. There's just a couple of spelling things. I don't know
Yeah,
if
So wherever you
it's
see
easier.
the word acre,
Oh, I saw.
however you type it in, it's just always remembering it in your,
Okay, and it's switching it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still
So
some, like, I actually just started this yesterday. I was like, oh, I should start it
yeah.
late. So, Yeah,
And I have a couple too,
Okay.
if you're ready.
Yep.
So on slide 2, I think it says 125 acres out of the 48 are in APR, but I
Yeah.
think those numbers should be reversed. Right, it's 48 out of the 125 are in
Yeah.
APR.
okay.
Also permanent is misspelled on that page, it's spelled permeant.
Yeah.
While we're on that page, do you think it's beneficial to tell the town or remind the town the money that we received from APR when we first bought the property?
I think that's in here, actually.
I think it's at the very
The master
end.
part, yeah, the MDR, it paid the town the difference between fair market value and agricultural value of the orchard.
Yeah, it doesn't have the numbers in there, that's
In
all.
terms of the 750,000.
I mean, we could definitely put that
I
number in
think it's a
there,
good reminder. I
Yeah.
think we have to assume, we should assume that some people haven't been in town since
Sure.
2000.
Yeah.
And to then, I don't want to muddy the water, but also how much money, the 250 that we got from self-help as well. So
Mhm.
people see that we did have money, federal and state funds that were contributed.
Yeah, that's good. I would put that in that paragraph on
Yeah, so I
on
maybe just,
slide 2, you know.
yeah, maybe just down the bottom after the MDR. Just
Yeah,
as
so
a
the
reminder
price it sold for, but the price the taxpayer actually paid.
Exactly. Yeah. And it might be that prior to talking about APR, you may want to have a slide that's just more from a historical standpoint, that this is when we bought it and this is the money that we received for it. Just kind of just a quick slide.
Did we do that?
Yeah, we did,
We have that somewhere.
we did,
I'm not very.
Because you
I,
might have a totally different audience.
yeah, I mean, I took it, well, I mean, I'm happy to like add it back in, because I didn't want the entire 2 hours to be a slideshow, so I was like,
Right.
wanted to be thoughtful
Yeah.
of, how long it may take, so just a,
Or we could even have it on a board, poster board or something.
Yeah.
People can just see.
Dry erase like we
Yeah.
did before.
yeah, okay.
Cool.
In the next slide, on slide 3,
Mhm.
I would add, in that first paragraph on the left column, I would add that the state Senate is what needs to do a supermajority
Okay.
in that first paragraph. Because it isn't, I read that the first time and I was like, oh, town meeting votes on it? No, it needs to be clear, it's the state.
Yeah, so for people, we have a slide that just talks about the Article 97, which got updated in February of 2023. They made it harder for anyone to take land out of APR. So you have to basically do a whole lot of things, and then you need to find an equal parcel to trade it for, so there's no net loss. So, all right.
And then there's one more, which is, I think on slide 5, you say the well is not functional. But
Yeah,
the pump isn't functional.
Correct.
I will clarify that the well actually is working
Yeah.
and providing 10 gallons a minute.
Yeah.
But the pump is absent.
Yeah.
And I think that's as far as I got. And I think that the invitation to have people, the question prompts that you put in there are great. Like, I think that's a really good way to kick off the conversation. I did notice adaptation is misspelled on slide 11. It says climate mitigation and adaptation. And I think you mean adaptation.
yeah.
Okay, that's it.
So I just wanted to jump back to slide 4, where we have the orchard property and we sort of break down like the acreage on it. So when I went back to Landvest report, they have like some really good maps in there, and I didn't know if we could ask them to like send us that map, and I didn't know if you thought it was a better map to use.
I've got their email, I can ask them that.
Yeah, because I remember when I did this presentation, someone said something to me about like parcel 5, which is the general use, and what that meant, and I was like,
I can email them tomorrow and ask for, just share it.
yeah. So I will make, yeah, so slide 3, when what we say what the property includes, I will update well to that has no pump.
That's on 5, I think. Slide 5, no,
Slide
slide 3, or at least on the one I have.
Yeah, it is slide 5.
Oh, it is, all right.
On your little number here, it says,
Oh, okay,
it says APR property includes.
yeah. And I separated out the residential structure and the main barn to highlight the fact that those are not included in the APR, even though it's surrounded by the
So-
APR.
Should we say yet?
Yeah, so we have new information on that for when we're ready to talk about it.
Okay,
So just note that this will be required. Those might need updating.
okay. We talked about progress, what we've done, challenges, of the property, flood, trees, cost of land. So then we get to slide 7. I sort of did this barriers to entry, and it has a grid that has, the value of the land restricted by APR and the unrestricted lots. And then cost of things like tree removal and replacing trees, and the estimates that the land vest report had about renovating the barn. I don't know if there wasn't actually a price tag for renovating the house, but I just guessed $500,000.
Yeah, I think that's a fair guess.
So, and then listing barriers to entry, like the mortgage and the rent and the taxes and, the number of years it's gonna take and the startup cash, and all that stuff. And then slide 8 is the economic factors, leading to the purchase. So this is something that Brad wanted in. So I kind of broke it down to the history, why we're moving towards an RFP for purchase and not to lease. So obviously the town has challenges managing the farmland. They have no interest in funding the property in its current poor state. And then there's just the sheer cost of renovating everything, which the town does not want to get involved in. And then just like the labor, the town, it's leased. People need to use prevailing wage. So those are all sort of like the reasons why we're the economic factors leading to purchase. And I don't know if anyone has anything additional to say or like another category we could kind of add.
I think they're good bullets. They're precise and they're right there. If anyone wants to discuss them further, we can. I think that's.
I think instead of applicants, we should clarify with RFI respondents.
Are you on slide 8?
The same
Yeah.
slide, the economic
So you've got
factors.
history, costs, labor, and then applicants.
Yeah.
And subheadings, I think rather than applicants, it should be RFI respondents,
Yep. Yeah, I like that.
just so nobody's worried.
Yeah.
I don't feel like
That they
they missed the
it.
boat. Yeah.
Yeah, we did have someone who emailed recently, who sent, this is a good question, who sent an RFI in, and I emailed him back, and he acknowledged, I know I've missed it, but here it is anyways.
Sure.
And I said, don't worry about it, you can still apply to the RFP.
Oh, that's right.
So, and then I guess characteristics of top applicants,
Maybe respondents. again.
respondents.
So you'll change that again, because then down below it says request for entrance 15 applicants.
Yeah, and I was gonna, that's something I needed to clean up. I needed to go back and look at all of them because I couldn't remember how many asked for lease, it was one for lease for purchase. But was there 2 people who wanted to lease or was it one?
There was more than one.
I can
Okay.
pull it up. I have it in my notes here.
You wanna come back to that?
Yeah, if you guys want to circle back, I
Yeah,
can
okay.
tell you that I'm looking at it.
All right, then the next slide, says the goals for 2004. So, starting with, we made the RFI public in January. We did a high-level review in March. I just put secure consultant to write the request for proposal as April. I don't know if that's,
Seems reasonable.
okay. And then in May,
That is reasonable.
You think it's too early? Okay, let's say May then.
okay.
I think that's still pushing it.
Okay.
Okay. Vote to list the property as a surplus in a town meeting in May. And then I didn't know what we should do in terms of date. So if we go to town meeting and they approve the property as surplus, when do we think we'll have a chance to review the request for proposal? I don't know if you have a sense of how long it,
Right, so we asked town council to clarify what the process looks like from beginning to end at this point.
Yeah,
We have not heard back,
okay,
so we're waiting on that. I would maybe asterisk the line about going to town meeting for it to be declared surplus. Because it is a possibility that the select board will declare it surplus. You could leave the body out, or you could just make a note that we need to circle back and make sure that
Yeah.
that's correct after we get more information from town council on process.
maybe.
So you could even just put town meeting / or board of select, so.
Yeah.
It's a fluid. And then what you might wanna do is, instead of just keeping question marks, just put TBD,
Okay,
so that way it looks like we're just not figured out yet.
but we definitely have to go to town meeting in, I don't know if it'll be in October or early November of this year.
Yeah, town will have to the town will have to vote at some point.
Yeah,
I don't think we should put a date in, because we don't know whether it'll be a specially called meeting or whether it'll be one that's usually happens on the calendar.
Right, just like another TBD.
Yeah.
See what happens.
okay,
But I think saying town meeting vote
Yes,
to approve any change of use is a good thing to put in there.
agreed, yeah, so that no one worries.
Okay.
I have the lease information. Let me go back.
yeah,
All right, so we had 1, 2, 3, 4 requests to lease in some way, shape, or form, whether it's lease to own or just lease.
okay,
We had 1 unknown. And then,
Must be 10
well,
purchase.
I think 2 unknowns or others. Would put it at, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to purchase.
Great.
That adds up to 14. If you go 4 lease, 2 unknowns, and 8. We talk about 15 applicants above it.
This one was,
because we had one lease to purchase.
Number 13 is a lease, as a purchase or lease to own.
lease to own.
So what you could do is go 5 and then write the word lease. And then go and lease to purchase option. So lease by, so it's lease / buy. So it's all just in one category.
Yeah.
So they basically want a lease or lease purchase.
Okay,
And then 2 unknowns, and
One was a hybrid ownership and lease, and one was not terribly clear.
right, so that way if we go 5
2
to
unknowns.
5 to 8, that'll work.
so I put the characteristics of nonprofit or for-profit, not all wanting to purchase. Majority wants to purchase. Strong ag experience as defined as number of years of farming, size of the property or acreage, mix of diversity of plants and animals, or existing channels of sales, they own farm assets and can access capital. Were those the high level characteristics that we
Yeah,
talked about, yeah.
I thought we kind of discussed I thought that we sort of decided it wasn't a profit or nonprofit type
we,
binary. It was more about community involvement or no community involvement or type of community involvement. I mean, I remember,
I think it was,
Brad having a pretty strong opinion that like, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit wasn't important to him, it was important to him
right, so
about what
either,
their role was in the community.
so either one.
I also think that,
Profit.
I know I mentioned like those applications that had specific goals, timelines, and an acknowledgement of the difficulty of cash flow the first few years was, it demonstrated that they understood in a realistic way what they needed to do in order to get it off the ground.
Just to jump back to Karen, do you want me to take off the nonprofit or for-profit line and just add community instead?
Yeah, I mean, I think community involvement or community, can somebody help me wordsmith it?
Benefit?
Do you want to put it underneath where one of the zeros are in terms of the caption? So it would be more of a characteristic versus a major? Like instead of a star, to do where it's indented? Like,
Number of years farming size,
Right.
property managed, mix of
I
diversity.
mean, I like
So-
community benefit because, you know, if you have a lot of native plants, that's a community benefit. If you like have a harvest event, that's a community benefit. I mean, it can be,
so if you want to do that, I would keep the nonprofit and the for-profit, but just add another, you've got room to just add another one. Community involvement, or however.
Well, I mean, it seems like with the profit and nonprofit, we're saying it doesn't matter to us,
yeah.
right? So,
Right.
so that, I mean, we can say we're agnostic on that, or we can just leave it off and say,
So is it your wish to just strike it?
I mean, I think it would, yeah, just to make
Strike
it
it.
clear.
Okay.
Like, we all agree, and Brad said it, like, a good for-profit business is gonna be better than a bad nonprofit business.
Okay. Anything else on that
The
slide?
goals and timelines, did you get that?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
wrote
okay.
that.
And for mix of diversity, is the idea that diverse, business types or diverse
Yeah,
agricultural?
yeah, like you're growing berries and then you have a few trees and then you have some sheep roaming around that you have just like multiple ways of bringing in income throughout the year.
So you might want to add the word agriculture in front of diversity.
Or
So-
multiple income streams, even,
Or both,
or both.
because like a little retail shop wouldn't be bad, you know.
Mix of agricultural diversity.
Well, not all of them had that. Some of them were pretty,
But again, we're saying
Yeah.
like, these are the criteria we're gonna judge the responses on. So nobody's probably gonna hit every single one.
Oh, yeah, like every
Right.
one is really different. And some are gonna be just like naturally be really strong in one area and maybe not register in another, but that doesn't mean it's like a not competitive application.
I want to circle back to what you just said. You said that this is what we're going to be looking for in the RFP, but I thought this slide was describing how folks landed as a top applicant.
Yeah, I mean, aren't those things congruent?
Ooh, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because my thought for this slide is letting people know what we learned or what characteristics kind of appealed to us versus that next step is our reaffirming our characteristics that we
Like
wish.
how we arrived at our decision, I think, is what this slide is
This
more
is more
about.
of a historic piece.
Okay, that's fine. We can, yeah, we don't have to say anything about the RFP on that one. I agree.
So do we want to add, so just for clarification on this slide, do we want to add RFI characteristics?
Yeah,
and
that
top applicant characteristics, because what can happen is this can be taken out of context. That if someone just jumps to this instead of seeing the other slide decks, you walk in. So. if
And
you-
again, respondents rather than applicants.
Okay, so I'll clarify that.
I think just to call the slide, just to give the slide a title, RFI input.
Okey-doke. So then we get to the highest and best use. which is in that sort of draft document Matt had started. So a for-profit so this is a slide, let me take a step back. So this is a slide that we're gonna put up to generate ideas from the community.
Conversation.
Yeah,
Right, from the community.
like almost like a writing prompt. So a for-profit or nonprofit who demonstrates goals or values, and then people can think about like what goal or value would be important to them. I put assets and capital, realistic rollout for farm renewal. You know, are people expecting it to be like overnight back up and running? Are people willing to tolerate like a longer, more patient rollout? A description or identification of farm practices, climate mitigation and adaptation practices or awareness. What experience would they like the farmer to have? What types of access they might want to the property? Like, you know, are they interested in spending time there? Are they, you know, are they interested in cross-country skiing across in the wintertime? Are
So like
they?
community access?
Yeah, I just use the word, I can write community access, I just use the word access to not,
We have to be very careful with that because I think from the standpoint, we talked about this a lot, that access is really I anticipate the access is going to be very limited. And I don't want people to assume that the next future owner tenant, whatever they are, is going to allow it.
Yeah.
So I think we have to tread very carefully on that discussion because it's somewhat out of our control.
yeah,
Only in as much as we can craft the deed or the agreement between there's probably gonna be some kind of HCA or MOU with the town. Perhaps, which could.
We have to be
set
careful
us
that
up.
we're not gonna micro analyze this and get back into the same losing another tenant.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
So this is where RFP criteria comes in, right? So to me, it comes down to, do we want to know whether the town wants access?
Well, I think,
I mean,
We didn't have access before.
I understand that, but if this slide, if I'm understanding it right, is to start a conversation with the public about what the public wants to see in an orchard owner. And if the public wants access, then I think that's something that we need to take into consideration. Maybe it's not realistic.
Right.
But
I think she's saying like, take the temperature of the townspeople is, you know, people they're not interested because they really don't access it now and haven't.
yeah,
Except for the pick your own.
Right, but they haven't been allowed to access it because there is not an understanding.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm concerned now that we're going to the next use, we're creating an understanding.
No, that's true. Maybe maybe instead of access again, it's community involvement or role in the community.
I'm very hesitant to have that discussion.
And I think
of
for some
access.
people might answer that with, I want to cross-country ski there.
Right.
But
But you're not allowed to do that.
that, you know, and that's
Yeah.
fine. You know, they can want that. But I think more people will look at that and think, well, I'd like to be able to go to the farm stand, or I'd like,
We also talked a lot about
you know.
not
sell them.
allowing, you had applicants that are like, we can't have dogs.
Mhm.
And so that's why we really need to talk about
Yes.
how
access.
about we just take access out completely?
Yeah.
And if someone wants to say something like, oh, I'd love it if they had like a harvest dinner, or I would love to just like stop at the farm stand, they can mention that under goals and values, or they could just bring it up.
So what is this? I'm sorry. What is this slide trying to achieve?
The slide is trying to, after we've given everyone all this information, that we can then have the community tell us what they would like to see happen to the property. That's my understanding of why we wanted to have this meeting,
This whole meeting in the first place.
was to help inform the RFP.
Okay.
Like that we would decide.
And we want them to weigh in on assets and capital, but not on community involvement? And I'm just lost. I'm just. a
Yeah, I
little
guess,
lost.
yeah.
I think we're
I'm not
just,
trying to be belligerent.
I think we're
Not
fishing for
comprehending.
trying to get feedback on, is there an expectation by the townspeople to have access. And if we sell the property, then we kind of lose that ability to
Right.
say, yeah, you can, no, you can't. So we just have to be clear about that. If we do sell this property.
But I think Karen's saying we're conflating like this group's RFP requirements, which include things like bank statements,
Yeah.
with like what the public wants out of the property, which is, I want to go pick your own. Was that what you were saying?
Yeah.
On
like
this
if-
slide, at least, there's two things going on there. If we're not gonna ask the people in the public information session, how do you feel about the, capitalization plan of these applicants, right?
I would approach this from a more holistic standpoint and take all of these out
Mhm.
and ask people, what would you like to see? And instead of kind of like zoning in on these topics, they're all great topics. However, I think it would be more important to see what other people would
What
want
they
to
come
see.
up with.
And some of these conversations will probably come up.
Yeah. we
Also,
can just-
the passive recreation that's being discussed would be more tied to the economic benefit of whoever is buying or leasing the property. If you were cross-country skiing and they were doing fire pits with hot chocolate afterwards or whatever, then there's a benefit to the farm to have that passive recreation. So in the sale of the property, the driver would be more economic than it would, they have to have brush out of the way and tree branches cleared so that lanes are accessible. And, if there was some kind of a grooming that was taking place to prepare trails or something like that, that's, something that would need to be provided, and there would have to be a benefit as opposed to a deed restriction where you're forcing a new owner to maintain a walking trail around the property. It should be tied
So
to
Will,
economics.
Will, are you sort of saying we shouldn't, as a town or a group or the RFP, we shouldn't get involved in specifying access at all and just let the person who purchases the property manage that?
Yes, I'm leaning towards Sarah's perspective where you're agreeing to sell the property, but you're not putting a deed restriction in, so it should be to that person's advantage, and that the access might change from year to year. If they're renovating one section, they may need people out of it, and if they're renovating another section, that would be a changeable thing. And if it's to the benefit of the owner or the leasee, then they should be determining what the access level is. I do understand wanting to kind of take the temperature of the community to find out, is that something that's important? But where they don't have access now, I'm not sure that putting it in the slide is, I think it would stir up a lot of confusion, sort of what Karen's saying.
Yeah, I understand.
Looking at financials and then requiring someone to make a commitment on public access is tricky.
Yeah, fair point.
Should we just leave it open, just like take all these bullet points out and just let the public generate their ideas?
Kristen Kazoka, 6 Cottage Way. I'm just curious, because, looking at the Littleton Conservation Trust, trail maps, there is a trail indicated through the orchard.
On the self-help, on the
Is that
lower
on
by the
self-help?
wetlands.
It doesn't
Yeah.
cross the APR, I don't think.
Okay, and then the parking lot to the orchard,
So that
Does
parking
there-
lot is part of self-help as well.
okay.
On
so
the
those are-
back access is there double.
Okay, all right, wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, so my suggestion would be to leave it to the public, and then you can always have, if everyone's not saying anything, you can always feed into something like, what would you like to see happen there in terms of the agriculture use or something?
Yeah, I think I'd love to hear what folks think about various types of agriculture that we.
And, or you could often say, do you want a farm stand? Instead of diving into one of the other categories.
So do you want to mix the whole
I
slide?
would,
Well, just leave it as like, what do you want?
Yeah.
exactly.
A prompt.
I would change it because when you look at that, you don't know who it is. I would add the word, what do you as a townsperson or taxpayer, or however you want to use that. So that way, when you're looking at the slide, the person that's sitting there knows that this is, you're asking me.
Yeah.
So you're defining who the who is, who the you is.
Town resident.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I can definitely do that. And then that's it.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And I can make all these edits and then send it out. And I'm always happy to make more edits.
Awesome.
Anything else on the public listening session?
We should make sure we get it on the website, obviously, on the town website. We can put it into LCTV and they can run it on their announcement.
Yeah, we're running out of news, e-newsletter.
So
I can make a slide and make, you know, how the
Yeah,
slides go
yeah.
by.
do you want to do that and just send it to Mark or
Yeah.
whoever?
And that'll go in the town under the Nagog Orchard for meetings
I
as well.
think that goes, does that go to Nancy?
I don't know who
That goes
does
to
it.
Nancy.
I think it goes to Nancy and maybe CC Ryan.
Yeah, well, they can, well, Matt can put it on the Nagog website.
Sure.
I can
Yes.
create a slide for LCT to advertise it, and the town can send out an email blast.
And the town can put it on their homepage as well, so.
What's the capacity of that room?
I think it's
70,
Yeah, I think something like that.
fire marshal says 70-ish. Because we went over 70 for MBTA.
Yeah,
We were
I
at
heard that, yeah.
I think for the gun zoning, we were at the limit as well.
Oh, right.
There were people standing outside.
all
So
right.
you're gonna do LCTV?
Yep.
And I'll do the Nagog Orchard page. And who's gonna send it to Nancy for the website?
I can do that.
Okay, or I guess
Once it's ready.
okay. And we're gonna ask for an email blast like a few days before?
Yeah.
Okay,
And I'll just CC you guys, so she knows I'm not just like randomly putting things on the download. And just for the audience, do you generally feel like that is a good presentation for the community to update them and like to lead them into an open discussion?
Yeah, I think asking questions is a good way to get people to share their ideas. I mean, it'd probably be a big group, it might be too big for brainstorming. Brainstorming is a great way to get ideas like that.
Yeah.
Could you just identify who you
Oh,
are?
I'm Joanne Deary, I'm from Harvard Avenue.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. So discussion update about the RFP development.
Okay, so, as I mentioned earlier, we have a query out to, town council to clarify what the process would be, for the RFP. What we have to go through, what votes have to be taken and when in order to issue it, blah, blah, blah. Once we know more about that, then we'll have a better idea about what our time frame is. I think a lot of town hall, and to a certain extent, a fair amount of the select board is pretty sort of, what's the right word? Drowning in town meeting preparation until.
that's a good word, yeah.
Until May. But my hope is that what we do is we get answers from town council. And then at the next meeting, we'll all be able to discuss what the process will be and how we can navigate it and sort of put together a time frame.
And
So, question for you, we've kind of gone through this before with town council. So I guess I'm unclear what's taking so long for them to.
I don't think we've ever
Circle
put out an
back.
RFP for selling property.
So that's
It's a
the
different
holdup.
process. It's a really different process about what has to happen.
Like the whole declaring surplus and who needs to do it is a
Mhm.
question that has not been answered before. So I think that they're trying to figure out the process, like what does the town have to vote on? What can the select board do? And what order do those things need to happen? in?
So they're researching.
Yeah, we've never.
It's
we've
And
never-
in the Commonwealth, they just have to research it.
And they're also they've also done a little bit of, they're also doing a little bit of groundwork. They reached out to MDR to let them know that we're considering buying so that that's officially transmitted. But yeah, it's a process.
I guess my question is there anything that we can do kind of parallel to while we're waiting? Is there something like a task that we can be sent homework tonight to go home with, like, okay, here are the things that when we are ready to prepare to come up with all the criteria, do we feel like we've already wordsmithed our criteria? Like, is there something that we can still keep going that we can help with?
I don't think it hurts for all of us to come up with our own list of what we think needs to go in there. To a certain extent, what goes, our criteria are going to be informed in part by the public session too. But we can fold that in after we all come up with our own thoughts about what the criteria are. There's something about, I talked about, it'll come back to me.
I do think like the more, all of us having a list of criteria, like, I mean, you said at the last meeting, like the job of whoever we hire to help us draft it is gonna be translating our wishes into RFP.
Yeah, it's gonna be like,
So,
I wanna be able to,
yeah,
they'll have a boilerplate. I wanna be
the
able to
clearer
be
we
like-
have what we want and that we come to consensus on that, the better the RFP is gonna be and the more it's gonna match our
Do we
vision.
feel comfortable that we could put that on the next agenda?
I do. I think that we have had a couple of discussions about the
Just to keep, because
criteria.
I mean, I don't think we're gonna get it done in one meeting, but
No, I want to make sure that that anyone who's walking into this process at any one given meeting understands from the public's point of view that we haven't made decisions before they've had their input as well.
yeah, no,
That input's
it'll
gonna-
just be a starting ground.
A draft,
Exactly,
right?
Right?
Cool.
Get our thoughts in a row and then see what other thoughts we need to take into account.
Yeah, I think we should put that on the next meeting agenda. A discussion of the initial discussion on criteria.
And I'll let Brad know, so he can put it on the agenda.
That'd be great.
Me too, it's Brad.
Do you have any news on the,
Here,
yeah, no,
Yes.
APR?
That's it. Yes, on the APR, word from Jamie Eldridge's office was that he had a successful meeting, with the commissioner, that, the commissioner indicated that they were willing to support moving the upper barn into APR. They were not going to support moving the house into APR.
Did they give a reason?
They did. One was the condition of the house.
okay.
And another was something that didn't quite make sense to me or Brad. It was about what is and isn't allowed and how houses are typically frowned upon under APR land, but
Especially one that big, that houses so many people.
yeah,
That's- if it was a small little cottage, I think it would be different.
so
Because it's more like a dormitory.
we should probably talk about moving into the historical preservation
Okay.
and or deed restriction path.
Should that be an agenda item for next?
Yeah, I think so.
Because, yeah. Okay, so that's helpful.
And that's another factor that's gonna
How do you think we would
play a role in
determine,
how we shape the RFP as well. of course.
how do you think we would determine deed restriction versus historic or combination of both?
So my understanding is deed restrictions are limited to 30 years.
Yep.
And so I think our first choice should be historical preservation restriction, which is permanent, or as permanent as we can make it.
Is there any reason we
Could
can't
you do both?
We could probably do both, yeah. Although I think if we do a historical, I think the deed restriction, I think the historical preservation restriction is linked to the deed of the house. So I think in essence, you're doing it, but there's no reason why we couldn't do both, I guess.
Okay.
Maybe the historical. preservation.
Yeah,
Shed some light
I'm sure-
on how
yeah.
the
Touch
two
base
interact.
back with Linda again and try and get that.
Yeah.
If so, she could reach out to the head of the Commonwealth's Historic Preservation and ask them, can we do both? Because we may not be able to do both.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be a 30-year deed restriction. May I ask another thing for the other business? We had talked about, and I think you, Karen, I think you or Matthew were gonna talk to the select board about having access to start to work towards inventory of that top barn that we're gonna need, especially if it's gonna be sold, in terms of getting that cleaned out.
I haven't spoken, but,
I bobbled that one, so.
Okay. I would just rather be able to have access when it's cooler, not hot. Because there's some stuff that just needs, like that, all that old furniture can just go out on the curb. And see.
And that's access to the barn
Yeah,
and the
just,
house or just the barn?
no, just car.
the upper
Yeah, I was
floors,
gonna say
right?
there's
Yeah.
nothing.
Can we go back to the RFP to, is there any movement on hiring, not Landvest, the other one, Rick Santilli?
Right.
Ray Santilli?
At the last meeting, we made a motion to go forward to pursue that.
Mhm.
I don't know. if that-
I thought Brad knew him.
No,
He's the
one-
lawyer who lives up on the.
No, this is
it's the
someone
one that
different.
We met with.
So maybe Brad knows, okay.
So, pretty sure didn't we make a motion at the last
Yeah.
meeting to go ahead?
Yeah.
So that would be Ryan or Jim, because that's procurement of, employment to do that. That's-
Sorry, I was,
So in terms of solidifying the fellow to do the RFP,
oh, yeah, right. Mhm.
has he actually been engaged?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
all. Jim's.
Oh, so that's what
Moving forward,
Matthew
yeah.
was looking for.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
no, I was.
Yep.
Making a draft email so I don't forget about the
Yeah.
access question.
Okay.
Bryce Antonio.
We're moving forward on hiring him.
Yep.
Contracting him. okay.
Yep. And since it's under the, max threshold
Okay.
or minimum threshold, I think we're fine to go ahead with that.
Okay.
Good news.
So it seems like we're in a good place, like we have someone to rate the RFP, we're waiting for town council to tell us about the
Right.
surplus issue.
And we're developing the criteria.
We're developing the criteria, and we're gonna talk to the historical commission about
Right.
linking it to the deed restriction, so that's kind of all happening.
The only other thing is the presentation at town meeting, which Karen and I spoke to the select board on Monday, and we stated we will be doing the presentation. I think there's some debate about when it will be. And also there's some debate about what's gonna be included in it. So once we hear back from town council.
Right, I think
On
that's
what
gonna
the
be a
process is,
game day decision, what's
Yeah,
gonna go down, so
probably.
it's gonna be like right before you walk in.
yeah.
Yeah,
which
but
is-
we already have like a lot of slides.
And so I think, I look at it that presentation is going to be brief and just kind of
It's
like,
gonna be like 3
here's
slides.
where we are, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say that I think town hall is gonna want a copy of whatever we're gonna do so that they can
Yeah.
put it up and all that good stuff,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah. But
But just so, I mean, when
We're
we
not
hear
ready
about
for
the
that yet.
process, we'll agree to it, okay?
do we have a sense of how much time we want? I think that would be helpful for them.
Don't they usually give you 10 minutes?
Yeah, they give you 10, but I was thinking we would do 5
I
because,
was thinking 5.
yeah.
Put on the pressure.
Yeah. It goes.
That's it, I think.
Sarah, on the access issue, is that?
Just
for you?
only for committee members, so like if somebody wants to help. or
But would you be
something.
POC?
Yeah.
Like someone's gotta hold the key and do it.
Exactly, yeah.
Great. Does anyone have anything else on the agenda? Any comments from,
When's the next meeting? What the date?
the next meeting would be 2 weeks from now. And
April 10th.
April 10th at 7:15, so that Will can participate.
Does anyone on Zoom have any questions? If so, if you could raise your hand, or anybody in the audience?
I have a question.
Oh, you have to
Yep.
state your address.
Okay, so usually,
Yeah, that might,
That's not
that's not on,
working. There's no mic.
this is our little guy
The
here.
owl is
Okay.
the mic.
So if you could just-
Jerry Cavallo, 8 Uplands Road. I did submit, first of all, thank you for all you guys for the last 3 years working on this. It's been quite a labor. I did submit, requested on the RFI, but you subsequently voted that you were gonna do a purchase and I was requesting a lease. So for that reason, I'm out. But, now I'm just a citizen, and I still have a personal interest in this. So the one question I think I don't understand is, when the RFP goes out, we should describe the property. Well, why aren't, for the response, asking two simple questions? How much are you gonna pay, and do you need any variances? Because in the end, after it's their property, all they have to do is follow zoning laws and the APR. So I heard something on a deed restriction, and if that's how you're gonna go about it, but, you know, actually, so when somebody comes in with an RFP and they say, oh, we're gonna sell all our food to people who are in need, and we're gonna have a petting zoo, and as soon as they get it, there's nothing holding them to that. They could just, and the part about, you know, the Morrisons wanted us to have apples there, and what was another one, of the profit, nonprofit. Somebody could buy it and then just flip it because it's theirs and they can sell it. So why are we asking any more than the two questions? How much, and do you need any variances? Because when you ask if they need any variances, then you know that they checked all the zoning laws and they've read the APR. And if they say they need variances, then it's not responsive, I would say, unless, because if you go by the theory that they don't have to do anything and that's not listed in the APR or the zoning laws. So I'm just trying to help you guys make it simple.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Appreciate that. And just so you know, so the Commonwealth So NDAR comes out to the site every year. So they are an oversight arm of the APR land as well.
I certainly understand they have to follow the APR and that'll be checked on, but the APR could be anywhere from grazing horses to raising food to apples or anything else in that APR. As long as they're doing what's in there, they don't have to do what they told you they're gonna do. They just have to do what's in the APR. And I bring up one other point. There is an exit clause to the APR. The exit clause says if that land is not arable, is that the word? Then there's some buyback for it. So I know we've done one sample for lead arsenide or lead and arsenic. And so I was reading Harvard and their Craftsman Common, whatever, they recently took an orchard and converted into housing. And it's very expensive. They're putting in new topsoil and whatnot. So, you know, if somebody was disingenuous, they could say, well, we've done many samples since we purchased it, and the town hoodwinked us, and there's actually lead arsenide all over this place, and we can't afford to remediate it unless we can build, you know, 56 houses on 1 acre lots, so let us go. So that's just another thing to look at, is maybe when we send out the RFP, we need to do more of the tests of what's in the ground. So at least when it goes out, they know that there's certain things you can't do. You really shouldn't be tilling the soil at all or moving around a lot of dirt.
Yeah, and we've been very open that if anyone wishes to do their own tests, they can do that. I think obviously we know that orchards are gonna have some arsenic, and we're laden with that in our area anyways, even without trees and that. So we have offered through communication, if someone wants to do the test, they can do that. It's on them to do so.
Right, I've been listening to you guys on TV, and the risk there is that, you know, it's always a big bad government against this poor person who didn't have all the knowledge. And we're putting it on them to do all the tests, but then we're kind of asking ourselves, then we might get ourselves in trouble because we didn't tell them, and they, for instance, we tested the mixing station. That's the place where you always find the most, is where they're mixing up the stuff. And they could come back and say, well, you know, we're finding all this out now. We can't do what we
But
said.
then the land would go back to APR.
Like-
So the Commonwealth would buy, so APR still holds that. So for instance, if we decided not to sell it, APR would then take control of the orchard. So, and that's what they've done on other properties. And Brad is the APR official.
And also, I would say, you know, like, what you're basically, I think, saying is someone could negotiate with us in bad faith.
Yes.
Which is true for a lease or a purchase. And the truth is that in a way, that's what happened for the last 20 years. the lessee did not maintain the property and the town didn't follow up on it. And although we had the right to do it,
That's
it
the
does, it
difference there.
doesn't, well, but it doesn't mean that we could have had any better outcome, because I think what would have happened is we'd be right where we are now, doing exactly what we'd be doing just 10 years earlier.
Well, I'm not advocating to go for a lease, but if you have a lease, you have the right to kick them off for not following it. If they
Right.
own the property now,
Yeah.
you don't have that right.
So I think at some point we gotta trust this process and trust that the person that we're gonna engage with is negotiating with us in good faith, and that they're gonna do what they say they're gonna do.
This is,
Some of the organizations that have responded are pretty clearly like invested in things like community outreach and, like communal farming and things like that. And I don't think that they're gonna flip the property or try to. So,
people have done worse for money.
It's true.
This is a big piece of property, there's a lot of money involved.
Town
I
can
don't
also
think
have
we
right
should
first
vote.
refusal to buy it back if what they pay.
That's true as well.
But I mean, in what transaction can you, there's no transaction where you can insulate yourself against a bad faith negotiator on the other side. Right? I mean, you name me any transaction that anybody undergoes and day in, day out, on a daily basis, and if the other person is acting in bad faith, you cannot insure yourself against that.
Well, you can,
absolutely.
if they don't follow zoning.
We will be working with town council, who will help us to mitigate that and make sure that we are getting as much proof of good faith as we can, but you can't insure against a bad faith.
Okay, well, I'll get off the stage with that, but my point is that the only thing town citizens have voted on are the zoning laws and the APR.
Yep.
So anything else you come up with is just a good idea by the council, and it's not enforceable. If whoever we sell it to doesn't follow the zoning or doesn't follow the APR, there are conditions to that, and we can get the land back or whatever. But just for these other things that they said they were going to be a nonprofit, but then they flipped it and it's a profit, you can't do anything about that from my point of view. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne?
I'm Joanne Duran from Harvard Avenue. So I've been thinking, I guess I'm a little bit scared about selling it and the town losing control of it. And everything that Mr. Cavallo has just said makes me even more scared, because he is right. It's a beautiful piece of land at the top of the hill. It's got fabulous views. If there's a way to turn that into 100 houses, somebody will try to do it. And then I was looking through the stuff that we did when we worked on the community farm, and we went to Grow Food Northampton. I can't remember who
Yeah.
came.
Yeah.
And that community
Northampton,
had
yeah.
purchased 2 neighboring farms. It was like almost 200 acres, I think, that they bought. And they have, I just looked them up. They have 2 long-term leases, one 198 years for community gardens to the town of Northampton. The other one is to Crimson and Clover, like their anchor farm, and that's a 99-year lease. And I remember speaking to the farmer who had this 99-year lease.
Yeah.
He had just gotten it like a year or 2 earlier, and saying, how does that work? Why is that good? And he goes, I need there to be something that I can pass to my kids. Like, there's a house here and, it's a 99-year lease. They can take it over.
Yeah, it's
from me if
inherited.
They want to do that.
Yeah.
And now I find out, like, well, Karen, recently, you said tonight there were like 4 of the people who wrote in to the first were people interested in leasing.
Leasing and or lease to purchase.
So like
Okay.
lease with
And
purchase.
one of them apparently is somebody already farming in our town. Like, why not look a little harder at that? I mean, I know you voted the last meeting, you're gonna try and sell it.
So we
I
did,
know,
and
I know.
those,
How do we look harder?
those applicants weren't the strongest applicants, frankly. I mean, some of them were, but not all of them.
Yeah,
Because if we lease, then the town is going to have to sink like millions of dollars over the years to improve it
I
so
don't
that a
think so.
leasee can function. I
We
mean, the
have to-
barn is not
we have to
We've
manage
operating.
got to pay prevailing wage.
but if it's
landlord.
leased, they're leasing it, they
Yeah.
do all that.
We're the landlord.
But someone who's leasing it,
They have to pay prevailing wages on their improvements to the structure.
And does the farm in Northampton have a house and a
There's a
barn?
house, yeah, they live in a house, I can't remember if they had a barn, I mean, it was like 2009 when I went there.
But I mean, all of the community farms that we have looked at are subsidized pretty heavily. Is that true for Northampton?
yeah, I mean, it's a
No.
nonprofit.
It's a nonprofit, but I mean, I assume that money flows into the nonprofit and it does not,
I
it's
don't know.
not a profitable farm, is
I
it?
don't know, I just remember like being there and being totally impressed, and it was 2 big chunks of it were leased
But
for
like,
long,
right,
long
but I'm
leases.
saying we go to the town and say, we need to spend $500,000 a year to lease this land or
But we didn't
whatever.
have to do that with the augers.
And the augers, as proved, the orchard cannot be a viable commercial enterprise.
Well,
like-
no, they just didn't work at it.
I think that part of the reason, and there were a lot of reasons, but I think that it was the orchards, as apple orchards, there are none left. They're doing, Carlson's is doing cider and,
Right,
you know,
and those
they're-
varietals have already gone, they're not in favor anymore.
The and reason why, Charlie didn't invest in the assets, like keeping up the house and keeping up the barn and all those things, was because, when he took it on, he was 60.
Right.
So he was
Older.
near the end of, 60 is not old, but, and then he was 70. A man who's 60 or 70 years old is not gonna
That's a
be
lot.
dumping like thousands and tens of thousands.
Let's carry on.
Yeah.
You've got a
Okay,
hand here and a hand here.
I'm sorry, in the back, your name and your address.
It's Kristen Kazokis. I have a question that's completely off topic, so I don't know if you want to try this.
Okay,
first
we'll go.
with
Yeah.
topic.
Okay, so did they just drop their hand?
was it Kathleen?
I think it was Kathleen Stewart.
Kathleen, do you want to unmute yourself?
Maybe we can sort of question.
Or maybe iPhone 2, kind of question?
Oh, hi.
Hey,
As
Hazel.
I
Hi,
come to-
Hazel.
Hey, I just wanted to chime in a little bit about the discussion of lease
Oh,
versus.
Hazel? Hazel, you
Yeah.
need to say your first and last name and where you live.
Oh, my apologies. Hazel, Charlesworth, Mendon, Massachusetts. Okay. But I just wanted to chime in a little bit about the lease versus purchase kind of thoughts. And I understand that there's a lot of concern about the risk. Like once you let go of a parcel of preserved land, you do, face risks that the individual who takes on the parcel is not going to uphold the original agreement to do XYZ on the land. I mean, but I hate to say it, but any like was mentioned, anything that comes with risks. You could also have people who you lease to who farm it, who strip mine the topsoil and don't take good care of the land, and you end up with a more and more worthless piece of land that has been basically mined of its fertility. So you have that. But just as a person who submitted a proposal, intergenerationally, like I have a daughter who would probably run the business, after I got too elderly to do so. And, you want to pass on a working, successful farm enterprise and a home to your children. I personally would not be willing to invest the large amount of money to restore the home and to create a business on a piece of property that I can never own. And regardless of how long the lease is, because, as we all know, hypothetically, we all, borrow against the equity on our homes to send our kids to college or to make major improvements. If you take away the farmer's ability to use normal financial mechanisms that are used by everyone else in the business world, they cannot own the land that they farm. And so I'll just, that's my commentary there, and that's all I have to say, but so I'll go under mute.
Great. Any other questions? Name and address again.
Kristen Kazokis, 6 Cottage Way. Just off of the topics that have just been discussed, maybe one of the criterias could be if they have direct links to the community already, and if they do, what their plan is this, because we're looking for a generational relationship that we're building, and how might they be envisioning that as part of the criteria? That may be helpful and ensuring that they're going to be doing this in good faith. Then the next question I have is, what about the mowing? I know you guys have talked about the mowing and first cuts are probably gonna be coming up.
Yeah, so it's in the budget, so we voted on that quite some time ago, so that is budgeted, same amount of mowing as this year, starting May through October.
Maybe from October.
Yeah.
Because that just may be a question at the, public meeting too. If you have a slide of what was spent with the care in the past,
Okay.
that might also be brought up with what maybe we needed, what your plans. Because I think you guys talked about, this whole process, we might not have an owner in there till like 2025.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, then, maybe it's time to close the meeting. So is there a motion?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:20, and that's March 27th, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor?
Say
Aye.
aye.
Yeah.
A roll call.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Jen Clancy, aye.
Amy Tarlo Lewis, aye.
Matthew Nordhaus, aye.
Karen Morrison, aye.
Will you have?
Figured I.
Yay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks all.